Today we're going to be exploring the best of Eastern Australia. Earlier this year, Bri and I had a few weeks free in our schedule, so a few days before we were supposed to take off from Denver, we decided to book a spontaneous trip to Sydney, Australia, where we were going to drive more than 50 hours across the country's eastern coast. It ended up being an action-packed 2.5 weeks. It was the trip of a lifetime. We hiked the tallest mountain in the country, we hung out with penguins on Phillip Island, drove some of the Great Ocean Road, slept in a hut in the middle of the world's oldest rainforest, scuba dived in the Great Barrier Reef, took a scenic flight over the Whitsundays, and so much more. Australia is one of my favorite countries, and in this video we're going to be taking you across our trip and showing you the absolute best things to do if you're coming to this area of Australia. And before we drive more than 50 hours across the country, we're going to take you back to the beginning where this journey starts in Denver, Colorado.
Take note of my suitcase and then take note of Kevin's suitcase. I literally cannot live without these. Every time I travel, they're my packing cubes and it makes things all nice and organized. I have my workout clothes, my t-shirts, my bathing suits, and in here are my socks and underwear.
Okay, and here's how I pack. Shirts, bathing suit, pants, socks, underwear. Looks good to me. For flying halfway across the world, we actually had a relatively easy flight path. We flew from Denver to San Francisco to Sydney.
This flight path is 16 hours, 15 and a half. I can go to sleep, wake up, and go to sleep again, and then wake up on this flight.
It was about 17 to 18 hours of travel with a 16-hour time change, and we landed local time on our third day of travel at 6:20 in the morning. And we got our rental car, drove 6 hours straight to Charlotte Pass, where we would start our hike up the tallest mountain in the country, Mount Kosciuszko. Now we are at Kosciuszko National Park to hopefully hike the tallest mountain in Australia. It's one of the 7 summits. It's an extremely famous mountain, even though it is a relatively easy hike. This has to be one of the craziest ways Bri and I have ever battled jet lag, but at the same time, by the time we finished this hike and then drove an hour to our first hotel in Thredbo, we were ready to knock out and fall asleep before we carried on for another big drive the next day. After our first night in Thredbo, we drove another 7 hours through Kosciuszko National Park. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Look at them.
Oh, that one looked.
Yeah, that one stood right up. Oh my gosh. And our final destination was going to be Melbourne, one of my favorite cities in the world. And to truly explore this city and the surrounding areas with Phillip Island and the Great Ocean Road, we got an Airbnb in South Yarra for 3 nights. Because Australia is so big, we cut our road trip into 2 parts. So after having done Sydney to Melbourne and spending a few days in South Yarra, we boarded a flight all the way northwest of the country to Cairns. And then from Cairns, this would begin the second stage of our road trip, where we drive all the way down back to Sydney.
We arrived in the beautiful beachy area of Cairns, Australia. We had a whole thing planned of Great Barrier Reef tours, beaches, tanning, and come to find out, we land, it is an absolute torrential downpour, and there's a cyclone, and it's a disaster, honestly.
We are at Mossman Gorge, and we just purchased shuttle tickets that takes us up to the boardwalk areas and stuff like that.
Alright, so this is our first outing here in the Daintree Rainforest. This is a super popular spot. It was about an hour and 15 minutes north of Cairns Airport. We made a bunch of stops. Not too many ocean stops because it is the Great Barrier Reef Scenic Drive, although because of the cyclone, all the water was brown and most of it was dumping rain on. So we're staying here at the Heritage Lodge. We are about 10 miles north of the ferry crossing, which was crazy. We had an amazing morning going to 2 swimming holes that are on property, which is insane, like private swimming holes here with the bluest water. And after this, we're heading to the Daintree Discovery Center. This is an incredible place where you can see tons of wildlife.
There's this little thing right here and it scared us. It's not real though.
last stop on this adventure is Hartley's Crocodile Adventure. Taking a boat out and seeing the crocodiles is a very cool experience, but there's also so much more to Hartley's. On property, you can watch cassowaries getting fed, which is the 3rd largest bird in the world. You can see a snake show, a koala talk, and you can even feed kangaroos. What's going on, everyone? We are here in Cairns, Australia. Bri and I are currently on a 2.5-week road trip. We are going to the Great Barrier Reef. We're going to do a 8-hour tour on the water. We're going to go to 2 different dive sites on the Great Barrier Reef, and we're going to go scuba dive. This tour ended up being $440 US for 2 adults, and if you wanted to do this same exact tour without scuba diving, it would have cost you roughly $320. So for each of us to do our intro scuba dive, it was an extra $60 per person. So even though we weren't sure if Bri wanted to go through with scuba diving, it was worth it to us to pay for the additional $60 each, so we had the option to scuba dive.
You probably can't hear me, but it's dumping rain. Absolutely pumping rain. And we're going snorkeling, so hopefully we can breathe through there. How we doing?
Oh my god. Oh my god, it's pouring.
So on this tour, we had 2 different dives at 2 different reefs. The first one was our scuba dive, but we weren't allowed to use cameras because we weren't certified. And then our second dive, we were going to be snorkeling. So any of the footage that you're seeing here was actually from our snorkel because we couldn't bring a camera on our actual dive. And I checked out of our hotel in Cairns this morning, woke up at like 5 a.m. and now we're headed to Mila Falls, which is about an hour and a half from Cairns, and then we're headed to Wallaman Falls in Goramgun National Park, and that I think is the tallest waterfall in the country. So very, very busy day. We'll be on the road for probably longer than 12 hours with these waterfall stops, but it should be an awesome day. Drove a total of about 10.5 hours today. Went to 3 waterfalls. Unbelievable day. We're in Airlie Beach. It is like 10:30. We have a busy day tomorrow. We are going to go for a scenic flight around the Whitsundays and Whitehaven Beach. Once we reached the marina, we checked in to get our boarding pass, we got our stinger suits, and made our way onto the boat for our first stop of the day. So we are currently hiking up to the lookouts above the Whitsundays famous photo spot, 3rd most photographed place in Australia, and then we'll head down to Whitehaven Beach. It's just like a 20-minute walk. So after spending 2 nights in Airlie Beach and exploring the Whitsundays and Whitehaven Beach, we were going to have one of our biggest days of driving on the trip. We were going to now drive 11 hours from our hotel in Airlie Beach to Amundi. We wanted to make it to Byron Bay, but this would have been a total of 14 to 15 hours of driving, and because the trip has been so jam-packed, we ended up finding a homestay in a town called Amundi, which we had never heard of, but this was such an incredible find because it was the most unique stay that we probably had on the entire trip, and when we woke up the next day on day 13, the people who owned the homestay were talking to us as we were checking out, and they were telling us about Amundi Market, which was going on that morning, and it's one of the most famous markets in the country. So of course we went, and it was absolutely incredible. And then after this, we carried on and we went and visited the Australia Zoo, which is owned by Steve Irwin's family. after exploring the Australia Zoo, we continued our drive down south to Byron Bay, where we were going to have 3 nights. But we did a quick stop in Surfer's Paradise, which is usually this sunny, beautiful, amazing sunset town with these big skyscrapers right on the ocean. It was pretty cloudy, which was a bummer, but it is still such a beautiful city. So we did a nice quick stop here and then made our way to our hotel. We spent a few nights in Byron Bay, which is this amazing place right on the water. It's a little quaint town compared to the big cities of Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast and Brisbane. I went surfing, we rented bikes, we ate a bunch of good food. This was probably the chillest few days of the trip, but it was incredible. So it was time to check out of our hotel in Byron Bay, and we had our last big drive of the trip. We had 8 hours to get to the Blue Mountains just west of Sydney to hike the Three Sisters Trail. This is a beautiful hike where you have incredible views of the mountains and the famous rock formations here, and then you can actually hike down a trail to an old bridge. The bridge is closed off right now, but the staircase and trail to get down to this area is so cool. You're just descending the side of a cliff on a little narrow staircase. It's a really cool spot for photography. We had a great time here, and then we had 1 more hour of driving to our last hotel of the trip in downtown Sydney for 2 nights. So we woke up on day 17, which was our last full day of the trip. It was a nice casual day, but we still did a ton of things. We explored Bondi Beach to see the famous Bondi Icebergs pool. We explored downtown Sydney, visiting the Opera House and Queen Victoria building. And then to finish our trip, we went and saw West Side Story at Honda Opera on Sydney Harbour, which was such an incredible way to end this trip.